Song, yeah, the piano man. The mood for a melody, and you've got us feeling alright. What's up, y'all? Sorry, I started the old stream. I was listening to little BJ. I was feeling a little frisky, y'all. You know how it be sometimes when you're just you're running on 2 hours of sleep. You've been awake since what time is it now? In my headphones, make sure there's no audio playing. You've been awake since 6 in the morning. You fell asleep at 4. It's currently about 10 o'clock. You're feeling fun. You're feeling like Billy Joel. Your microphone. See, folks, this is how it's going to be. Your microphone smells like a beer. Is what I was trying to say. Uh, anyway, y'all, what's up? I love y'all. Glad to be here. Glad to see you. Glad you could join me. And I just got done. I was going to be on here earlier, and I'll probably do some streaming in a minute. I also will probably put up a stream I did. I had a couple friends of the pod jump in to that. That was a gaming pod. Aaron would be very proud of me. Speaking of, I'm going to try to have him on soon. Scarborough. I can show you guys the pod he was on before. That was a fun one. But it was just kind of an icebreaker for the pod, and I'm going to try to have him on, and we'll see. Yeah, maybe at some point I'll go on his pod. They're starting up a new pod, him and a couple buddies, so we'll see how that goes. But like I said, let's go over to this. I came on late because I was listening to this, which is New Bloom's stream. So it's called Ethical Supply Chains and Labor Practices. A talk with Bonnie Ling. And it was really good. And I will obviously, as I always do, link it in the show notes. And yeah, basically just talking. There was a lot of talk about Taiwanese labor practices, especially as they relate to migrant workers, most notably Southeast Asian workers, the ones that are most often forgotten. And yeah, as you can see, it's about an hour and a half chat. There's probably about 45 minutes to an hour of lecture, and then 45 minutes to 30 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes of Q&A at the end. And they did more, but it wasn't on stream, so unfortunately. But hey, I do have to give a big shout out to New Bloom for doing this, because a lot of stuff that happens in Taipei, and everyone knows how Ari and I feel about Taipei, is kind of relegated and segregated to Taipei. It's like, oh, we're gonna do this like big event with like this important speaker, and like we want to spread the message. Come join us. And then it's like in like a 15-person room venue, and they don't stream it. It's like, you guys have acts like, but anyway, it's not to like dump on people. Like, I get, some of that's, but the main point is shout out to New Bloom for actually streaming this thing, putting it out there. I luckily saw it like right when it went up. I knew they were gonna do it, but I am very disorganized, and like I said, I'm running on about 2 hours of sleep today. So they posted this, and I was like, oh hell yeah, this seems right up my alley. And in fact it was, and I would suggest that you guys all go over there and listen to this as well. It's a really detailed talk, and Ms. Ling has some great points, and there's actually really great follow-up questions as well from some people in the audience. So yeah, just definitely go listen to that. Maybe Ari and I will talk about this more. I'm gonna try to keep this somewhat this whole thing that I'm doing here a little bit brief, because like I said, I'm going to be stumbling a lot, and I hate when I am not precise with my words. But suffice it to say that Taiwan does a pretty bad job with its labor practices. In a lot of ways, especially again when it pertains to these migrant workers that basically have no path. I mean, to be fair, like even people like Ari and I who are like considered quote unquote skilled labor, as if there's anything besides skilled labor. Like, I mean, the idea of skilled labor is kind of a myth. But anyway, like we're considered like skilled labor, and even we don't really have a pathway to citizenship unless we have basically two options. We get like this bonus lottery. You hit the YouTube lottery and got like super famous and brought some recognition to Taiwan, and every year like 40 or 50 uh, random foreigners get like automatic dual citizenship, or we revoke our citizenship to our native countries and roll the dice on if we can pass the citizenship test and get accepted. So it's basically a farce. There's no real pathway to citizenship for us, so as well. But obviously, we can at least get permanent residency. A lot of these migrant workers don't even have a chance to get permanent residency, so it's even more of a joke. And then you have the brokerage system, which they go into. And actually, there were some interesting points made on this kind of system of these people going out and looking for these workers. And I for a long time have been kind of in favor of getting rid of it, but there was actually some interesting points made that like you can get rid of it as like South Korea has. And again, you should listen to the talk because they're like much more knowledgeable on this stuff and will say it in a much more succinct and astute way than I will. But essentially, you can get rid of it, and then a lot of times some of that stuff just goes underground. But perhaps one of the solutions might be to instead, because right now what happens is a lot of the fees are placed on the workers themselves, when obviously it's the employers that need their labor and obviously are going to then exploit their labor and pay them a fraction of what their labor is actually worth, as we all know how the capitalist system works, when actually the answer is, at least part of the answer might be to put the fees on the people seeking the labor, that are then going to obviously exploit the labor. And then there's also talks about overworking, overtime hours, unpaid labor, or quote unquote overtime that is like quote unquote voluntary overtime that is actually like expected and coerced, and discussions of essentially like trafficking and like borderline trafficking, and a lot of things like that. Again, it's obviously I can't summarize it in a couple minutes when they did an hour-long talk that was very detailed with experts. I'm not like an expert in this field, so go check it out. Again, it will be the first link in the description, so do that. Moving on here. So there was, if you guys follow what's happening in Taiwan / China circles, I guess, at all, you'll have heard about this story. So there was a story at this democracy summit, which has been a big deal. China's obviously been lashing out about it, that Taiwan got invited to this democracy summit that Biden was hosting. There's like 100-something nations, I believe, that were invited, and Taiwan was one of them. And so you had, look at that, man, very cognizant. Sorry. You had them getting angry about it, whatever, and then there was actually the Audrey Tang Fong was giving a speech, and she's Taiwan's digital minister, amongst other things. Interesting enough, I was actually going to critique them for gendering Tang, but I just did. I said she, because Tong is transgender, but I've said this in previous videos. Tong has also come out as like postgender, so they perhaps said you can basically call them by any pronouns you want. So I guess you can't misgender Tong. I mean, I'm sure some people like try to be dickheads and like, obviously you could be a jerk about it, but anyway, what I'm trying to say is that I think it's interesting that most websites, this is just a quick aside, that most websites gender Tong as a female now because they came out as transgender and now have like come out as postgender. But anyway, again, if Tong doesn't care, then again, also who cares? And because I've probably known more or thought more about Tong as like as a trans female, I probably also would tend to do that as I just did. So anyway, I'm probably throwing stones in a glass house. But anyway, so Tong was giving a speech at this democracy summit, and the cable was cut, and basically like people freaked out about it. They thought basically that perhaps Biden or the White House or whatever was like trying to like kind of like not shut it down, but like kind of cover it up. So like maybe China wouldn't get as mad. Maybe they're appeasing China. I think Occam's Razor would probably tell us that they're just like old tech illiterate people that don't know what the hell they're doing, which is probably where I would land, and that it was just kind of a flub, which is obviously what they say. And I'm not one to just like trust the White House, but like one, it's a pretty small thing, and two, like I also think that they're like they're kind of dumb. Like most of the people, and this is not like, it's not like the Biden White House is dumb. It's like most of these people in Congress and in elected office when it comes to technology are not as smart as like your average like 12-year-old who knows how to use TikTok. So anyway, but of course it's got to turn into a partisan thing in the United States. So Marco Rubio comes out hardliner on China, even though if you asked him about their stance on video games and getting rid of the sissified male in China, he would probably be like, hell yeah, that's base as fuck. Man, I always try not to swear too much on these. I'm trying not to get canceled like Hassan Piker, but I'm not going to say the C slur. And I'm not talking about the one that describes that's like a slur against females. I'm talking about the one that's a slur against white people. But I'm not going to say it because apparently people are getting banned for saying the word that follows the word saltine. Like when you eat soup, you eat it with a saltine. Hopefully everyone knows what I'm talking about. But I'm not allowed to say that anymore, even as a cis white male. So anyway, Rubio was triggered, and he accused Biden of trying to appease Beijing, as if Biden hasn't literally been probably one of the strongest presidents in maybe ever on Taiwan. Like you could maybe find people that were stronger on like the ROC, but in terms of Taiwan, like Biden's made numerous gaffes where people had to have like back up his statements because he was like, yeah, the U.S. will defend Taiwan. Like no one has said that. And Rubio, who's a little kooky for Trump, a little Trump stan, is going to critique Biden, and I'm the furthest thing from a fan of Biden. I think he's an idiot, and let's say seems a little bit detached from reality and just doesn't really seem to care, and has not been even fighting for his own agenda. But has put a pretty hard line on China, whereas Trump seemed to take his coronavirus policy directly from China, and from some accounts, basically was willing to sell out Hong Kong for like a good deal. I was going to get the best deal with China, folks. I was going to get a good deal, and then I was going to say, hey, Hong Kong, you want it? Have it. It's okay, folks. So to listen to little Marco with his small hands and his small body critique Biden is kind of laughable. I do hope that obviously they all are. I don't even really care about being be hard on China. Like, I'm not for like a ramp up to a Cold War, but like, yeah, for their human rights and stuff. Yeah. And for acting like they're, for being aggressive against a free and independent country. Yeah. Say like, listen, we're not going to accept this as not only the United States, but an international community. You can't just threaten. And obviously they can't say an independent country. They have to keep this sort of ambiguity. But you can say, listen, you're the only person threatening violence here is you, being China. You need to calm down. Like, as Biden has said, the Taiwanese people, and you can say, oh, maybe he needs to say the ROC people, whatever moniker you want to use. They need to decide for themselves what this is going to be. I think that's where it should lie. But anyway, they did put the whole video up on the internet, so it seems like it was probably just, a miscue, but it seems like something that should be mentioned. And like the Straits Times says, Mr. Biden has sought to emphasize democracy as an implicit shift from his predecessor, Donald Trump, who befriended authoritarian leaders like Xi Jinping. That's my editorialization. And also Kim Jong-un. And then they also say, and has criticized U.S. allies and sought to overturn his election defeat. So that would be Donald Trump. So we have issues with this that come along with it. So speaking of this whole, like I was saying, speaking of this whole thing, sorry, people are like texting me like crazy right now. China has targeted Taiwan's, what is this, Taipei? Okay. Anyway, sometimes we say that Washington's, Beijing's. But they didn't say Beijing, so this should say Beijing targeted Taipei's diplomatic allies, or China targeted Taiwan's diplomatic allies. But whatever. I'm being nitpicky. After excluded from the Democracy Summit, obviously China is going to be excluded. China is not democratic. Let's be serious. They try to make. I talked about this in the last update. They did a word salad tweet that meant nothing. Like we have a strategic people's democracy that is backed up by a Sinophile democracy with Chinese characteristics, democratic style. It was nonsense. But this is interesting because they have gotten, or it seems like Beijing has coerced, or I shouldn't use the word coerced. They have gotten Nicaragua to switch sides. They have convinced them to switch sides, let's say. And maybe this was a long time coming, but it does seem interesting because if you go back to maybe last time or 2 times ago when I did an update, Nicaragua was actually one that seemed like they were going to stick with Taiwan. They had said basically that they kind of doubled down on support, and I actually thought that was a reassuring thing. I was wrong, clearly. But that was the statements that we had come out, and this was because Honduras had said that they were potentially going to switch. Now, interestingly enough, Honduras now, yes. So the Honduras is obviously it's kind of a mess when it comes to this, but Honduras actually hasn't switched since the election of Castro, which I also talked about this. Like Castro, her husband, was deposed. The coup that took place was like at least tacitly backed by the Clintons. It's very long and complicated. But she's the first female leader of Nicaragua. Ing-wen obviously being the first female leader of Taiwan. Ing-wen congratulated her on her win. She said thank you. Again, this has all been covered on previous updates. So it's interesting that Honduras actually hasn't switched. and obviously you can see here, there's so much speculations. Honduras to keep Taiwan relations. Incoming Honduras government to keep Taiwan ties for now. Embracing China will be a perilous move for Honduras' new president. Opinion. That's opinion anyway. Honduras likely to follow Nicaragua in cutting ties with ties as China courts Latin America. So you just have all this speculation. Right now, we don't know. That's the bottom line, is that we have no idea what's going to happen. Obviously, China, like it says here, is going to try to go after them, but we don't know. That's the main thing, is that Honduras is kind of up in the air. Unfortunately, Nicaragua is gone. What I would also like to say is that while the international news media is having a field day with this and like losing their minds, and you'll see like some people on Twitter losing their minds, the average Taiwanese citizen seems to be pretty either unaware or somewhat agnostic about it. Like, I had a couple younger people talk to me and say like, it kind of sucks that like Nicaragua kind of shed ties with us. Most of them don't even say that. If they do say that, what I've countered them with is like, hey, what about like Lithuania and a lot of these other nations strengthening ties, which we'll get to some even more of that in a minute. There's been like French diplomats or people coming over, French government officials coming over to Taiwan, and obviously a bunch of others. We talk about them on the updates all the time. This is kind of one of the main topics that we've been covering in the last couple of weeks. It's good to see. And so there's positives and negatives. Like, Lithuania is literally opening a Taiwan representative office, which is like something that almost no other country has done. And they're also, Lithuania is basically cutting ties. Again, something we'll get to later. But like I'm saying, it's complicated. And my main point is that Nicaragua cutting ties with Taiwan has not been like, some pundits online have had their hair on fire, and average Taiwanese citizens have not. At least most of the ones that I encounter. And I do live in the South in like a more green periphery, I guess. It's not like, I don't like, the area I actually live in is not super green. My specific neighborhood is actually a little bit more blue because it's working class, and the DPP hasn't been the greatest on working class. Not that the KMT has, but anyway, it's in some ways it's similar to the U.S., where both parties have not done a great job of sticking by the working class. Though credit does have to be given to the Tsai administration for like continually raising the minimum wage. It's not enough, not even close, but they have at least been doing something. Whereas you look at the Biden administration right now, like promising all this stuff and then totally dropping the ball. Like, I just got emails from my my student loan people that was like get ready to start automatic repayment. I've gotten like 6 or 7 emails already. And it's like, wasn't Biden talking about cutting $10,000 in student debt? And now Jen Psaki Bombs was like, I don't think we need. He's like talking about how we don't, that's not the priority right now. Or one of the quotes I saw from her was, if Congress decides to pass it, Joe Biden would love to sign it. It's like, why doesn't Joe Biden just cancel it? It's like, he can cancel it. He could literally cancel like 1.7 trillion with the stroke of a pen. Those are just the facts. So basically, he could cancel like 90% of student loans with the stroke of a pen. It's kind of ridiculous, Anyway, got a little. Try not to get too sidetracked here. So, this might be one of the reasons that Nicaragua cut ties, is because the U.S. was trying to push Nicaragua to stick with Taiwan, and obviously Taiwan was as well. The U.S. was in a much better position to give them vaccines, though. So, this is what it says for anyone who's listening. Again, if you're listening, I always try to say this: please watch on the YouTube. It will make a lot more sense. I'm getting just absolutely obliterated with messages right now. So Nicaragua, this is the title of the article. Nicaragua gets 1 million vaccines from China after break from Taiwan. That's basically all you need to know from this article. I will share it. But here's another one. So here's a little more info. So this is from the Havana Times. The title of the article is "Why Nicaragua Has So Few Vaccinated." So the article starts off here. A total of 5.3 million doses would be needed to vaccinate 40% of Nicaragua's eligible population. At present, less than 5% of Nicaraguans are fully vaccinated. So this is the thing when we talk about vaccinations, and where I get frustrated with people in America who are like, especially the elites. This is what I'm talking about. Elites that are like, we just want to get everyone vaccinated, like Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci, I'm science. Dr. Fauci is synonymous with science. Why don't we send some of our surplus vaccines overseas? Why don't people like William Gates, I'm live on Twitch. What can I say? Why doesn't he become a recluse, let's say? I think I can say that, right? Why doesn't he become a recluse and stop trying to block patents, or ensure that these patent waivers don't pass? Why doesn't he just allow this transfer of vaccine technology to these third world countries? And also just this surplus of vaccines that the United States has, which no one's talking about anymore, this giant surplus of vaccines. Now everyone, of course, because of the Omicron, obviously the vaccine companies are just like licking their chops. Why don't they push some of these onto the third world? They're expiring like crazy, which I have a story about. Here's one thing, like I was saying, no one's writing about this. Look at this. America's vaccine surplus, COVID vaccine surplus is what I searched here. You have an article from the Brookings Institute from May of this year. You have one from the Washington Post from March of this year. That's basically it. You have one from June, one from July, but no one's talking about it anymore. There's nothing on here. We can go to the news tab. It's the same thing, or it's completely different articles. Okay. It seems that India is struggling to export its surplus of COVID vaccines. Some of that's because of COVAX, which again, thanks Bill Gates. So, it's just absolutely hard to tell. But here's one example. This is from NBC News, and keep in mind this is from September 1st of this year, 2021. It says pharmacies and state. The title of the article I should read for everyone. So if you want to go search it, because some people won't check the notes, and I want to make sure everyone hears it. 15 million COVID vaccine doses thrown away in the U.S. since March. New data shows. So this is 15 million between March and September. So imagine there's even more now. So think about that in terms of how many nations we could have vaccinated. You could have vaccinated over half of Taiwan with that. Granted, Taiwan is actually one of the luckier nations with its own vaccine, and then getting a lot of vaccines from other places. Not always necessarily the vaccines people want. A lot of AZ vaccines, but that's a different conversation in and of itself. So this is. Pharmacies and state governments in the United States have thrown away at least 15.1 doses of COVID-19 vaccines since March 1st, according to government data obtained by NBC News, a far larger number than previously known and still probably an undercount. So even this 15.1 is probably less than actually what it is, and that's just for that period of time. I can't even imagine how much it is for them. And this, we're letting people die. So when people tell you that the reason that we're keeping these patent waivers in place, the reason why we're keeping these is to keep Americans safe. No, it's not. It's not. Now, if we're talking about, these third doses, these booster shots of certain people, if you want to keep some on hand, that's fine. We can also, the other thing is we can boost production. So Biden could order that pretty easily. I mean, it takes a while for these facilities to get started up, but again, if we didn't make sure that these manufacturers can guarantee their profits by making sure that they can keep these patent protection laws in place. Then we could have exported to other countries, and all the countries around the world, if we actually cared about global health, just like I criticize the WHO all the time about not caring about global health by keeping places like Taiwan out of the WHO. If America cared about global health, they would give this vaccine that was publicly funded. A lot of these were publicly funded to everywhere in the world that can create it. Of course, we would have to do quality testing because some countries, certain countries, may not have as high of quality control as maybe some place like the United States. Though, to be fair, there were huge issues with shots like the J&J that had a plant that basically just got infected, and they had to recall like billions of doses, as I recall. So there's problems in the United States as well. Let's not get it twisted. But of course, we have to do quality testing, quality assurance. Yeah, that happens. Do that, but give these whatever is the most effective, and we should continue checking that, obviously, because we're continuing having variants, partially because we're not vaccinating the whole world and we're allowing it to spread. Well, like only 6% of Africa is vaccinated, and like we said, Honduras is barely vaccinated. So a lot of these quote-unquote poorer countries. It just rings hollow to me when people talk about global health and they do things like this. So we need to push, everyone needs to be pushing their governments to make sure that we're getting rid of these patent laws in terms of vaccines. We should obviously not have any sort of profit making when it comes to healthcare in general. I think that should be clear. But anyway, I could go on for hours about this. I'm sure Ari and I will talk about this, but I can't go on forever. I need to keep moving on, but it's drives me insane, and I hope it does you as well. So, like I said earlier, we have some French MPs arriving in Taiwan for a visit among Chinese. Of course, they have to put this in the article title to give it a little juice. But we have a group of 6 French lawmakers arrived in Taiwan for a 5-day visit on Wednesday. So that would be today, technically. Following a similar trip led by French parliamentarians in October that China sought to discourage. Who gives a what China thinks they can pound sand, and every country in the world should tell them that. It's not their call. Taiwan's an independent country. Now, they don't necessarily have to say that because China's red line on Taiwan is that if you call it a country, so say, well, Taiwan want us to have it, you call it a rogue government. Well, the rogue government want us to there, and you can't stop us because you're not our country. So, again, pound sand. So, one of the head of the Taiwan Friendship Group in the National Assembly said, "We wish to have exchanges on all dimensions of relations between Taiwan, the EU, and France on the economy and culture and all issues at stake for our countries." So again, these are small steps, but they are steps towards actual diplomacy, which is what the world needs more of. I think in every case, even when it comes to China, I think there needs to be more diplomacy. Now, do I think there needs to be more trade? I think there needs to be a lot more oversight of trade because clearly there are very, very credible allegations of China using slave labor. Obviously, the concentration camp issue and the detainment of Uyghur Muslims, and there are recent stories about forced study. Obviously, I've talked about this before, of Mandarin language in Tibet. They're basically doing cultural genocide in Tibet. Obviously, Inner Mongolia is the same thing. I talked about that. They rolled tanks through when people were protesting in Inner Mongolia about the desire to keep their own language alive there. So there's cultural genocides all over there. There's forced labor in a lot of places. Even if you don't want to think about quote-unquote ethnic minorities, a lot of Chinese citizens work for less than $1 a day. Now, granted, Americans work for poverty wages too. Now, I don't think many people, besides, let's be honest about this, there are Americans that work for about $1 a day. They're called prisoners, and those people are modern day slaves, and they should be paid at least the minimum wage, and should we're not going to get into the prison system issue. China also has a huge prison system issue, and also both countries need to get rid of the death penalty. China literally has vans where they will they're death vans where they'll pull up and basically kill you inside the van if you get the death penalty. So that's an issue for another time. You guys can look into that, and like I said, I'll also try to talk about it another time. But they both have huge problems with that. But we need to America needs to oppose these sorts of slave labor practices, these human rights abuses in China. But I think what would go a long way in making their cries of human rights abuses and slave labor ring a lot less hollow would be to deal with their own problems at home at the same time. I don't believe in that you have to get your own house totally in order, because no one's perfect, to call out other people, but you need to at least be working on your own ish if you want to call out other people's. So suffice that to say. Also speaking about people in countries, I should say, reaching out to Taiwan, Lithuania has been reaching out to Taiwan, and now they've actually pulled out their remaining diplomats from China amid tensions looming, it says, over Taiwan. So this is an article out of republicworld.com. This is all over. You can find articles about this. So anyway, they've pulled out, obviously because China basically has cut off almost all diplomatic relations with Lithuania over the fact, like I mentioned earlier, that they're going to set up a representative office in Lithuania and call it the Taiwan Representative Office, and then there's plans to actually set up a diplomatic office in Taiwan as well from Lithuania. So again, good to see these smaller states working together, similar to, we've talked about this before on the podcast, places like Somaliland. Again, Somaliland has some problems when it comes to LGBTQ rights and things like that. And again, we should be pushing people, and I think that Taiwan needs to do a better job of nudging countries in the right direction when they decide to be their diplomatic allies. We've talked about this before, and I hope to continue to encourage it, because while it is good to have this recognition, if you only have recognition from actors that have questionable governments, semi-authoritarian governments — I'm not saying this about Lithuania, but some of these more monarchical governments that Taiwan is friends with, unless you're dragging them along with you towards the path of democracy, sometimes it looks a little bit hypocritical, is what I'll say. But again, I don't want to get bogged down in that. Maybe a discussion for another time. Next, this is a really good article that I'm going to hope to talk about more with Ari. We'll probably be doing a podcast on Friday, so here in about 2 days. But this article is in Australian Strategic Policy Institute, aspi.org.au. It's called Borrowing Mouths to Speak on Xinjiang. And this is Ryan Fergus and Nathan Russer are like some... Fergus Ryan. I don't know why my brain switched that. Have been some really good voices. And obviously, this whole article is like really good. It's quite long, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I will link this. And like I said, hopefully Ari and I will be talking about this on Friday's podcast episode. So the thing you guys should know about this is basically what it's about is, like it says, barring mouths, in this case, like foreign YouTubers, foreign influencers, to basically cover up the atrocities that the Beijing administration is perpetuating throughout its country. There were, I don't have the article up here, but there were recent talks and rumblings about China coming to the U.S. and using PR firms to go find influencers in the U.S. to whitewash their Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics that are coming up soon, that it looks like they're not going to do a very good job in a lot of cases of boycotting. Now, the U.S. is doing a diplomatic boycott, which I think is kind of a cop-out. There might be a few that also do that, but it doesn't look like anyone's really going to boycott that hard. I could be wrong, and shout-outs to Ryan, not the author of this article, Ryan, but my buddy Ryan. We were having a conversation about this, and he said, what if someone basically did a 68 Olympics style protest, where obviously referencing the 68 Olympics when you had two sprinters stand up on the podium and hold up the black gloved fist as a signal of, depending on when you ask them, sometimes they would say it was a signal of black power or as a symbol of resistance. But anyway, this symbol of sort of protest and defiance, and that we're here to acknowledge, at least acknowledge, because again, like when you talk to some of these people further down the line, like Carlos, it seems like both of the sprinters in these cases have like a little bit differing opinions of actually what the protest meant. But the basis is that something is unjust here, and we don't accept it, and we want to acknowledge the fact that it's unjust. So he was basically saying, what if someone, like wins a medal, stands up on a podium and like pulls their shirt up and it says like free Hong Kong or free Xinjiang or something. And I think that would be an incredible statement if someone could do it. Now, granted, it's a small statement, but you think about when you say 68 Olympics, people generally know what you're talking about. Now, younger people listening to this maybe don't, but you probably know the picture of the the raised gloved fist. And I've actually talked about this story before. It's a fascinating story, and I won't go all the way into it. But the person who got second place in that actually gave them the idea, because he wanted to actually stand with them in solidarity. He wanted to wear a pin with them. And he gave them the idea because I forget which sprinter, but I think it was Carlos had forgotten his glove, because they were both going to bring their gloves, and he had forgotten his gloves. And so he gave them the idea of both putting on one glove and then like raising the fist. Anyway, and he basically died somewhat in like dejected, kind of without a lot of recognition, kind of abandoned by his fellow Australians for his solidarity with these two black men. But anyway, I'll try to figure out where I talked about that more in long form, but it's a fascinating story, and you should absolutely look into it. But suffice it to say, sorry again, I've 2 hours of sleep, long-winded today. That could be a powerful moment if someone does something like that, and I honestly hope they do. Though I do fear for their safety if they do something like that. I mean, the feed will instantly get cut, honestly, but like, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to imagine that they would like kidnap a foreign athlete for doing that, but then again, I mean, it's not a foreign athlete, but they kidnapped Peng Shuai, and they kidnapped a couple Canadians not too long ago. They kidnapped foreign people, maybe not quite that famous as like an Olympic-style athlete, but somewhat on the regular. So I don't know. It would be risky, but it would be inspiring. Well, we can say that. And of course I got these in the wrong order, but this was the article I always reference when we talk about Lithuania, but anyway, we'll skip over that. So, yeah, suffice to say, a lot of stuff going on, and hopefully I'll get into it in more detail on more sleep, so I won't be so scatterbrained. I apologize, y'all, but hopefully you learned or got a little bit of something today. Ari's got a new article up here on the website, so everyone go check out the website. basically the death of quarantine, besides in talking about zero COVID, aside from basically Taiwan and China right now are the two nations that basically have continued to go for continuing in favor of the zero COVID policies. Fascinating article. Go give your thoughts. You can comment on that below. And then obviously we got like lots of updates, lots of podcasts, everything on here. When you do go over here, please do us a favor. Click on this. Make sure that you get rid of your ad blocker, and then you'll see some of these beautiful ads. If you're not already seeing them already, sometimes you'll just see them. But if you have an ad blocker, it will try to block them. It does a great deal for us if you see these ads, if you see something that interests you, if you just give them a little click. It really does help us a lot. I can't describe how much it actually does help us. And then, yeah, check out the ads. And if you see anything that you do find interesting, yeah, feel free to keep clicking on stuff. And the other way to support us, if you have a little extra money to throw around, is obviously to donate on the Patreon. So we got lots of Patreon levels. You can go through them. They start at $3 a month, and that gets you the access to Discord chat. We put some games together, as I'm probably going to do here in a minute after I upload this to the YouTube and the podcast services. You can do $5 a month. We'll send you a personalized postcard of our personalized film photography that we've taken somewhere, either in America or in Asia. We'll probably start with Taiwan pictures. But if you do have something that you want, you can send us a message on like basically anything. You can PM, DM us basically anywhere. And if you have like a place, we've been to Taiwan, at least for me personally speaking, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, Cambodia, that I have film pictures in. Obviously, the most of it's in Taiwan, but Ari's got some from China, actually some from Xinjiang of the North Korean border, or of Xinjiang and also of the North Korean border from inside of China. So lots of interesting photographs. We got a ton of them here. Actually, I was looking on here. Let me see. I think I got a couple. Oh no! Don't look at all my pictures. Don't look at all my information. But yeah, there's a lot of cool. These are just like random ones that I took with the 31 millimeter. These are not so clear because they're with the 31 millimeter. It's like kind of a cheap point and shoot, but some of them are beautiful, right? And obviously I have a lot of different cameras that I've taken them with, so I have like more clear pictures. We have all kinds of different stuff, but just to give you like an idea, and these are just like everyday pictures that I take. These are not like the special ones of like when we go to events. I have ones of that I'm getting done right now of the festival we went to, which Ari and I will talk about, the Ocho Ing-wen, which is a festival that only happens every 3 years, where they burn. So you can go check it out on FCP Twitter. I posted the pictures, but there's just huge piles of ghost money and a boat. They literally just burn a boat. The ghost money burnt for like 36 hours when we were there. That's how big of a pile of like paper money it was. But anyway, yeah, this is some samplings. If you have specific things you want, if you want like really clear ones, you want like grungy, like construction pictures with like bottles, like cans of Taiwan beer and stuff, these construction sites that I've taken, you can let me know. The first one, it will be just a random one, but after that, if you can hit me up before I send the first one out, maybe I'll get you whatever you want, honestly. But anyway, Patreon really helps us out. But honestly, folks, another thing that just helps us is just when you share. You just say, hey, you talk to your friend, you say, hey, listen, I heard about this, my buddy, or I've been listening to this podcast for a while. It's called the FreeChinaPod. There's an interesting website called the FreeChinaPost. Go check it out, and you share it with your friends, get them interested. That obviously helps us a tremendous deal as well. Word of mouth is also a huge thing. So, all of that rambling done. We appreciate y'all. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. And I will talk to you soon. And you know how it do. FCP 最大。